They called it a myth, a whisper passed between scholars and wanderers who were drawn to the idea of forbidden knowledge. A library that was not bound by centuries or civilizations, a place where records from impossible eras seemed to coexist. Some said it was the Vatican's darkest kept secret. Others believed it was older than Rome itself. But every version of the story carried the same truth. It should not exist, and yet it does. Imagine walking through a narrow corridor of stone, damp with centuries of silence, only to step into a vast chamber that defies reason. The architecture does not belong to one culture, but many. Carvings that echo Mesopotamia stand beside frescoes of Renaissance brushstrokes. And among these walls are manuscripts written in languages long erased from history. Texts that somehow survived fires, wars, and purges that should have destroyed them. It is as though time itself bent to protect these volumes. What unsettles scholars most is not the existence of ancient texts. Libraries across the world hold fragments of civilizations long gone. What makes this one different is its impossibility. Accounts suggest that the collection contains records from centuries beyond their supposed authors. Chronicles of events not yet lived, warnings etched into parchment before the disasters they describe ever occurred. In one account, a Jesuit priest spoke of a leather-bound codex written in flawless Latin, dated in the 12th century, describing the fall of Constantinople that would not occur for another 300 years. Another manuscript supposedly told of the Black Plague in chilling detail, written decades before the first outbreak. To hold such pages is to feel history folding in on itself, collapsing the boundaries of past and future into one. For the Church, the existence of such knowledge poses an unbearable paradox. To acknowledge it would be to admit that history is not a linear path, but a tangled web where future and past bleed into each other. To suppress it is safer, and so the library, if it exists, remains buried under layers of secrecy, spoken of only in hushed tones. Yet fragments of this story have escaped the silence. Scholars point to peculiar absences in the Vatican's official catalogs, vast empty entries where entire collections should be. Travelers from centuries past wrote of rooms deep beneath Rome where texts were guarded not by monks, but by armed men, whose duty was not preservation, but protection. Not protection from dust or fire, but from human eyes. Why, then, has this legend survived when so many others have faded? Perhaps because it touches on something humanity has always feared, that history is not in our control, that we are merely walking a path already written, while the true authors hide behind locked doors and guarded archives. And yet, the myth of this impossible library is not just about fear. For some, it is about hope. If there are words that describe disasters before they unfold, might there also be ones that reveal the path to prevent them? If these pages exist, they are not just records of the past, they are the blueprint of existence itself. What would it mean if the future has already been written? And more importantly, who has been entrusted with such dangerous knowledge? Across every civilization, there exists a recurring pattern knowledge too dangerous for the masses, guarded in silence and locked away behind walls of secrecy. The ancient pharaohs of Egypt are said to have hidden entire collections of scrolls in chambers beneath the sand, texts that spoke of lost sciences and rituals meant only for the eyes of priests. In Mesopotamia, stone tablets whispered of forbidden astronomical cycles, records that vanished just as sudden empires collapsed. It is in these fragments, scattered across time, that we find echoes of something larger, a great archive, forbidden and elusive, resurfacing across civilizations like a ghost. Each time it appeared, rulers and secret orders rose to protect it, determined that the common eye should never glimpse what lay inside. The Greeks hinted at this when Pythagoras returned from his travels in Egypt with knowledge so advanced it defied explanation. The Library of Alexandria, too, was rumored to be more than a collection of scholarly works. It was said to house translations of texts far older, relics drawn from lands and cultures now lost. When the flames consumed its halls, scholars claimed it was not merely history that burned, but a record of humanity's forgotten beginnings. Even in China, whispers remain of the heavenly records, hidden archives said to chronicle both celestial events and technologies from ages that official history refuses to recognize. Imperial dynasties guarded these texts like treasure, restricting access to only the most trusted scribes. What the world was allowed to read was but a shadow, a softened version of truths considered too volatile for the public. The echoes of this pattern grow louder when we turn to the Middle Ages. In the cloisters of European monasteries, entire wings of knowledge were sealed from laymen, reserved only for the highest clergy. Alchemical manuscripts, coded philosophies, and arcane diagrams were quietly copied, stored, and hidden from the world outside the abbey walls. The Vatican itself became a fortress of this practice, curating what humanity was permitted to know while the rest vanished into their vaults. Legends say that the Templars, during their rise in the Holy Land, stumbled upon fragments of this very archive. Not mere relics of gold, but knowledge mathematical, astronomical, and spiritual that gave them influence beyond their military strength. Their sudden rise and equally sudden destruction only deepened suspicion that they had uncovered truths too dangerous for kings or popes to allow. And so, across eras, the same rhythm repeats. Archives appear and disappear. Knowledge surfaces, then is buried again. Always under the same pretext: protection. Protection from misuse, protection from misunderstanding, protection from those deemed unworthy of wielding it. Yet behind this excuse lies a darker undertone, that knowledge itself is power, and that power must be guarded. The déjà vu is unmistakable. The architecture of secrecy in Egypt mirrors that of Rome. The silent guardians of China resemble the hidden scribes of Europe. Different languages, different symbols, yet the same instinct to keep humanity in a state of half-knowing, to grant fragments of the truth while reserving the whole for a chosen few. What binds these stories together is the sense that humanity has always brushed against something greater, some body of knowledge that does not fit neatly into the timelines and explanations we have been taught. And every time that archive begins to surface, it slips once again into shadows, hidden by fire, war, or decree. But legends are not destroyed so easily. Even when scrolls are burned and temples are toppled, whispers remain. A symbol carved into stone here, a reference buried in scripture there, a myth retold in hushed voices across continents. Like scattered pieces of a broken mirror, they reflect a picture too large to ignore. It is this mosaic of fragments that fuels the idea of a forbidden archive, not one library in one place, but a thread running through all of history. An inheritance guarded, erased, and reshaped again and again, yet never entirely lost. An archive that may not belong to any single civilization, but to humanity itself. And if these echoes align, if these fragments do point to a singular source, then what remains hidden within it is not just the history of one people, but the secret history of us all. Inside the Vatican Library, there exists a silence heavier than stone. Not just the hush of scholars or the etiquette of sacred halls, but the silence of secrets too vast to be spoken aloud. Among its endless shelves are manuscripts that scholars claim should not exist, because they describe a world that predates history itself. These are not the works of medieval monks or Renaissance philosophers. They are writings copied from sources older than any known language, texts whose symbols echo Sumerian, yet deviate in ways no linguist can explain. Whole volumes describe constellations as they appeared in the skies not thousands, but tens of thousands of years ago. Some maps of the stars match alignments that only existed during the Ice Age, long before the first civilizations supposedly carved their stories into clay. What unsettles scholars most is the accuracy. Astronomical details recorded with precision modern telescopes, only confirmed in the last century. Lunar cycles timed down to fractions of a second. records of solar eclipses perfectly aligned with data from NASA. These writings, if genuine, suggest that whoever composed them had knowledge of the heavens far beyond what our ancestors were thought capable of. Then there are the narratives, accounts of civilizations we are told never existed, cultures described as dwelling on vast islands swallowed by the sea, or kingdoms ruled by figures who lived not for decades, but centuries. Some manuscripts record entire dynasties of rulers with lifespans that defy biology, echoing myths from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and even the Bible. And yet, these aren't myths written as allegories. They are kept as genealogical records, dry lists of kings, reigns, and years, as if meant to be archived history. The contradictions grow stranger still. One manuscript, written in a language no scholar has ever identified, depicts a global flood long before the age of Noah. Another describes great migrations across continents at a time when those continents were still thought to be uninhabited. Each text challenges the linear story we've been taught, the neat line from primitive hunter-gatherers to enlightened modernity. Instead, they whisper of cycles, of knowledge gained, lost, and buried, only to surface again. The Vatican's official stance is careful. Most of these texts, they claim, are either misdated, mistranslated, or misunderstood. Yet whispers from those few who've been granted access tell a different story. Some manuscripts are locked not because they are fragile, but because they are too dangerous. Writings that, if released, would unravel the foundations of history and theology alike. After all, how do you reconcile a Christian timeline with documents that place advanced civilizations tens of thousands of years before Genesis? How do you explain languages that no known culture ever spoke, but that nonetheless can be partially decoded by modern linguists? The secrecy itself becomes part of the enigma. Scholars petition for access and are denied. Researchers who have seen fragments speak only in riddles or in cautious papers that bury their revelations in academic jargon. And in this silence, theories take root. That these manuscripts are remnants of an antediluvian world, survivors of Atlantis, or the echoes of civilizations erased in cataclysms humanity has long forgotten. One thing remains undeniable: the texts exist. The Vatican guards them not as curiosities, but as treasures, sealed away in climate-controlled chambers behind iron doors. And as long as they remain hidden, the official story of history, of when writing began, of when civilization arose, of when knowledge was born, is fragile, perhaps even false. Because if the manuscripts are true, then history is not a line, but a circle. And the circle has turned many times before, leaving only fragments behind for those brave enough to read them. From the moment whispers of forbidden knowledge began to circulate, rulers and empires moved quickly to seize control. Power has always feared the written word more than the sword, for while armies can be defeated, an idea once unleashed cannot be silenced so easily. The library at the heart of this story became a battlefield not of weapons, but of secrets, with kings, priests, and governments each determined to decide who could read, who could know, and who must remain blind. Medieval monarchs viewed books not as objects of learning, but as dangerous sparks that could ignite rebellion. Inquisition officials carried torches not only to burn heretics, but to consign entire shelves of manuscripts into flames. Their justification was cloaked in piety. Knowledge, they said, could corrupt the soul, but beneath the sermons lay fear. Fear that these texts held truths that would weaken their grip on the faithful, or expose the machinery of control behind their thrones. The pattern repeated across continents and centuries. When Napoleon stormed through Europe, rare manuscripts vanished into private collections. What could not be owned was often destroyed, ensuring no rival could use it. The same occurred under the shadow of the British Empire, whose scholars carried home crates of artifacts, scrolls and codices, sometimes proudly displayed in museums, but often locked in archives where only a select few had access. The public would hear of discoveries, but rarely see the unedited contents. Modern powers perfected this tactic with subtlety. Instead of fire and conquest, they used classification stamps, redacted reports, and sealed vaults. Governments claimed national security. Churches spoke of protecting souls. Corporations muttered about intellectual property. The language changed, but the outcome remained identical. Knowledge was withheld, parceled out only when it served the interests of authority. What emerges is a haunting rhythm. Whenever humanity comes close to rediscovering certain truths, the hand of power intervenes. Knowledge is not lost naturally. It is stolen, censored, or deliberately destroyed. The cycle is older than printing presses, older than empires, perhaps even older than recorded history itself. Each age imagines it is freer than the last, and yet the same shadows loom. The guardians of secrecy adapt their masks, but never release their grip. And so the library becomes more than a physical place. It is a symbol of all the knowledge humanity was not permitted to inherit, all the discoveries deliberately withheld. The silence that hangs around it is not the quiet of absence, but the hush imposed by those who still fear what might happen if its contents were read aloud. The fragments invite us to imagine what lies beyond them. What truths could change the way we see our past, or even redefine what it means to be human? Every burned page, every stolen manuscript, every file stamped classified, suggests not only what was taken, but what was feared. Power has always known that to control knowledge is to control the future, and the library suppressed, stolen, fragmented, remains the greatest battlefield in that war. The manuscripts whisper of worlds that should not have existed. Between their worn lines are fragments that scholars cannot easily dismiss: schematics of flying machines, sketches of devices that could channel energy, even hints of medicines capable of halting death itself. These are not the tales of simple villagers or the imagination of poets. They are precise, deliberate, and unervingly modern. One page, crumbling at the edges, speaks of vessels that could soar above the earth without wings, moving as if the sky itself bent to their command. At first, these passages were dismissed as allegories, visions of angels, perhaps, or metaphors for divine chariots. Yet the descriptions contain measurements, weights, and intricate diagrams, as if penned by the hand of an engineer rather than a dreamer. The pages name metals that would not be smelted until centuries later, and speak of fuels that did not exist in the known world. How did a medieval scribe describe technology that mirrors the airships and rockets of today? Another manuscript reveals devices that harnessed energy not from fire or coal, but from the very elements of the earth. One drawing, circular and coiled like a serpent eating its own tail, bears resemblance to what modern physicists would recognize as a primitive generator. If these fragments were pure invention, they should be crude, vague, and inconsistent. Instead, they display a mathematical symmetry that suggests understanding far beyond the reach of their age. Even more troubling are the accounts of weapons, shafts of light that could pierce through stone, sound that could topple walls, and beams described as sunfire captured in a vessel of glass. To read them with the knowledge of our era is to hear echoes of lasers, of sonic weaponry, of technologies still in secret development behind closed military doors. But to those who first copied these pages, they were the artifacts of gods, legends of battles fought with powers that mortals should never wield. The manuscripts also describe medicine, not the crude remedies of herbs and poultices, but concoctions that promised regeneration, mixtures that could heal wounds in days rather than months, formulas that preserved youth. Among these passages are notes about organs transplanted from one body to another, written centuries before the first surgeon ever attempted such a feat. To historians, these accounts read as fantasy. To medical researchers, they carry a more unsettling possibility: knowledge that was suppressed, lost, or hidden away by those who feared its consequences. Perhaps the most puzzling entries concern the passage of time itself. Diagrams show wheels within wheels, spheres turning inside spheres, calibrated with astonishing precision. One device is described as a keeper of the hours of the heavens, accurate not only to the day, but to the smallest division of a second. In an age when time was marked by sundials and crude water clocks, such descriptions feel impossible. And yet, they are too specific, too technical, to be brushed aside as mere symbolism. Taken together, these fragments form a picture that is both thrilling and terrifying. If true, they suggest that our ancestors knew far more than we give them credit for, that their understanding was not only advanced, but hidden, perhaps deliberately, within the cryptic folds of manuscripts that survived only by chance. Were these pages records of forgotten civilizations? Prophecies delivered by minds that glimpsed the future? Or are they evidence that knowledge has always been a guarded possession, handed down in secret while the rest of humanity stumbled in the dark? The mystery deepens with the eerie consistency between these texts and the technological marvels of our present. What modern scientists achieve through centuries of research, the manuscripts hint at with an almost casual certainty. The parallels are too sharp to ignore, yet too dangerous to accept without unraveling the fragile tapestry of history as we know it. These manuscripts do not merely describe lost technologies. They challenge the very idea of progress. If their accounts are authentic, then progress is not a straight line from ignorance to knowledge. It is a circle, one that humanity may have walked before, only to fall and forget. And if that is true, then the question is not whether these technologies existed, but who took them away and why. The library shelves are crowded not only with texts, but with enigmas that defy understanding. Among its most confounding treasures are manuscripts written in languages that no scholar has ever fully explained. Letters curve and twist in patterns that seem to follow rules of their own, unrelated to any alphabet or script known to humanity. Some glyphs bear a faint resemblance to ancient cuneiform or hieroglyphics, but only superficially. The closer one examines them, the less they make sense. For centuries, cryptographers, linguists, and historians have attempted to decode these texts. Pages have been scanned, transcribed, and compared against every known corpus of language. Yet the results are inconclusive, often contradictory, and occasionally terrifying in their precision. A single sentence, repeated across different manuscripts, seems to encode multiple layers of information, simultaneously literary, mathematical, and perhaps even scientific. It is as if the language was designed not just to convey meaning, but to conceal it in plain sight. Some passages appear to have been structured with phonetic logic, suggesting they were spoken aloud, yet the sounds are impossible to reproduce with any known vocal range. Others contain symbols that resemble musical notation, implying the manuscripts could be read as sound, yet no modern instrument can fully replicate them. Researchers comparing these texts to other mysterious writings, such as the Voynich manuscript, have noted striking similarities. Recurring geometric shapes, bizarre botanical illustrations, and celestial diagrams that defy contemporary astronomy. Even more unsettling are annotations in the margins, penned in a different hand. They suggest an awareness of time and history beyond their apparent age, referencing events centuries before the first known settlements in the regions they describe. Some of these notes are warnings, cryptic instructions that suggest the knowledge contained within could be dangerous if misunderstood. Scholars speculate that the creators of these languages may have encoded these texts intentionally to prevent misuse, to safeguard information meant only for those who could truly comprehend it. Theories about the origin of these scripts abound. Some suggest they were invented by a secret society, meant to encode forbidden knowledge about technology, medicine, and philosophy. Others propose that they may have extraterrestrial origins, remnants of communication from an unknown intelligence. Regardless of the theory, the texts resist simplification. Each attempt at translation raises more questions than answers, hinting at a depth of knowledge humanity may never be able to fully access. Interestingly, patterns in the text suggest a level of mathematical sophistication far ahead of their purported time. Some symbols correspond to prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and astronomical constants, revealing a deliberate encoding of scientific principles alongside linguistic content. The manuscripts are not random. They are systems of thought captured in symbolic form, designed to challenge comprehension and reward deep, patient analysis. The cryptic languages are more than intellectual puzzles. They are warnings, testaments to civilizations or minds that perceive the fragility of human understanding. Each unreadable glyph is a silent testament to the limits of scholarship, a reminder that some knowledge was meant to remain beyond reach. As modern researchers continue their painstaking work, these scripts stand as sentinels, protecting secrets that might alter the very way we perceive history, science, and language itself. By studying these texts alongside other enigmatic works, a disturbing pattern emerges. Human history may have been shaped by knowledge too advanced to survive exposure. Libraries burn, texts vanish, and yet fragments remain, like embers from a fire meant to be forgotten. The languages of this forbidden library are not merely scripts. They are keys, and only the most daring or perhaps the most cautious can attempt to turn them. The library does not reveal itself easily. Its corridors are said to shift in ways that defy logic, staircases leading nowhere, doors opening into rooms that should not exist. Those who have claimed to enter speak not only of books and manuscripts, but of presences guardians that watch and intervene with a silent authority. These figures appear in fleeting glimpses, sometimes dressed in robes that resemble monks, sometimes in forms that feel entirely alien, beyond human comprehension. Their presence is not aggressive, but it is exacting. They enforce a boundary between the curious and the prepared, the reckless and the worthy. Accounts from explorers, scholars, and secret seekers describe encounters that feel almost ritualistic. Some were warned through sudden chills, unexplained sounds, or fleeting shadows that vanished when approached. Others report being shown visions embedded in the library itself, manuscripts that seemed to animate, revealing consequences of knowledge misused, histories rewritten by forces unseen, and technologies that could unravel society if brought to life. The guardians appear as both protectors and admonishers, reminding visitors that certain truths are not merely dangerous, they are transformative, capable of altering the mind or twisting perception. One particularly chilling account comes from a 19th century scholar who claimed to have located a hidden entry beneath a monastery in southern Europe. Within hours of descending into the library's lower vaults, he encountered a figure shrouded in black with no discernible face. The figure gestured to a manuscript lying open, its pages filled with incomprehensible symbols, and then vanished. When the scholar returned to the same location the next day, the vault was gone, replaced by solid stone and overgrown ivy. This pattern repeats across centuries. Libraries vanish, rooms collapse, corridors reshape themselves, leaving no trace except testimony from those who barely escaped. It is not only physical presence that terrifies. Guardians are reported to have projected warnings through symbols and subtle manipulations of perception. One visitor described seeing words crawl across pages, rearranging themselves into a coded sequence that conveyed caution and consequence. Another felt an invisible hand guide them away from a forbidden section, an act as protective as it was menacing. These interventions suggest an intelligence highly attuned to the risks posed by unchecked curiosity, emphasizing that knowledge, when mishandled, can carry costs far beyond human anticipation. The question arises, are these guardians sentient beings, relics of secret societies, or constructs embedded within the library itself? Some theorists posit that the library is alive in some sense, designed to protect its own secrets with adaptive defenses. Others suggest a human origin, clandestine orders tasked with preserving knowledge through the ages, their identities hidden behind layers of ritual, myth, and time. Regardless of origin, the pattern is consistent. Intruders are tested, and the price of arrogance is immediate and personal. Many return altered, burdened with visions or insights that weigh on their minds for years, while others vanish completely, leaving behind only whispered warnings. Accounts of guardian encounters also hint at a psychological dimension. The library seems to probe the intentions of those who enter. Researchers who approached with greed, ambition, or hubris often reported disorienting experiences, staircases folding into themselves, entire wings vanishing, or illusions of endless descent. Those with measured curiosity or reverent intent describe the guardians as guides, revealing fragments of hidden truths without overwhelming the mind. It is a system of checks and balances. The guardians as arbiters of mental and ethical readiness, ensuring that knowledge is only accessed by those capable of bearing its weight. Modern explorers attempting to locate traces of the library continue to report phenomena that cannot be dismissed. Electrical equipment fails, compasses spin uncontrollably, and instruments record inexplicable energy readings. Locations documented by historical accounts appear and disappear when revisited. Some of the most intriguing reports come from linguists and cryptographers who encounter manuscripts out of place, only to have them vanish days later. In these instances, the guardian's presence is implied, a subtle enforcement of boundaries beyond any physical confrontation. The stories converge on a singular lesson. The library's power is as much psychological and philosophical as it is physical. Knowledge is not a neutral tool. It carries with it responsibility, consequence, and often danger. The guardians, whatever form they take, embody this principle, making clear that the pursuit of forbidden knowledge is never without cost. In protecting the library, they safeguard not just the secrets within, but the sanity and continuity of those who might encounter them. By tracing these accounts across centuries, a pattern emerges. Every civilization that claims to have found fragments of the library also notes the presence of these unseen custodians. They appear where boundaries are crossed, where curiosity exceeds caution, and where history risks exposure. Whether supernatural, human, or something beyond comprehension, the guardians remain an enduring enigma, a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge often carries a hidden price. In the end, the encounters are warnings written in human experience. Not all doors should be opened, not all manuscripts read, and not all curiosity indulged. The guardian's silent vigilance preserves this delicate balance, maintaining the library as a place both of wonder and dread, accessible to few and survivable by fewer. Beneath the labyrinthine halls of the library, scholars whisper of a vault that is older than the building itself. It is said to be sealed not by mere locks, but by layers of security designed to keep even the boldest intruders from descending. The air is said to change near its entrance cooler, denser, charged with an energy that resists explanation. Locals speak of vibrations underfoot, low hums that suggest machinery hidden far below, humming with an intent that feels both deliberate and incomprehensible. Accounts from those who claim to have glimpsed its contents describe artifacts that defy understanding. Devices constructed from materials unknown, alloys that cannot be replicated, and mechanisms that move without motors. Some manuscripts refer to the vault as a repository for knowledge too dangerous to touch. Schematics of machines that could manipulate energy, maps that chart places that should not exist, and codices chronicling events that appear impossible by all conventional histories. These descriptions suggest that the library above is merely a surface layer, a curated space meant to distract or guide, while the vault below preserves the raw, unfiltered truth. More unsettling are the reports of skeletal remains found in obscure archives, described as non-human. Elongated limbs, extra joints, and cranial structures that contradict any known anatomy appear in sketches and notes smuggled out by scholars long ago. Some argue these were hoaxes, misinterpretations, or artistic exaggerations. Others insist they represent entities that once coexisted with humans, perhaps creators, observers, or guardians themselves. The presence of these skeletons near complex machinery fuels speculation that the vault was not intended solely for storage, but for experimentation, observation, or preservation of hybrid knowledge that blurs the line between technology and biology. The machinery within the vault is equally enigmatic. Witnesses describe oscillating devices, rotating spheres that emit light in impossible wavelengths, and panels covered in symbols that resemble both language and mathematical formulae. Some of the more detailed accounts suggest these machines were active when discovered, humming softly as if waiting for interaction. Attempts to study or touch them reportedly caused immediate disorientation, nausea, or temporary paralysis, as though the vault itself repelled intrusion. Few have survived these encounters without psychological scars, their memories fragmented and haunted by glimpses of structures and mechanisms beyond comprehension. It is said that the vault's guardians are unlike those in the upper library. Here, the presence is tangible, almost tactile. Scholars report shadows moving with purpose, cold gusts that follow passageways, and whispers that linger in the air despite the absence of any source. Some believe these guardians are the remnants of those who first constructed the library, bound eternally to the vault to ensure that no knowledge leaves unchecked. Others speculate they are automated protections, ancient technology designed to respond to intent, allowing access only to those capable of perceiving and understanding the risks involved. The vault has inspired obsessive quests. Researchers in the modern era, armed with advanced sensors and technology, claim to detect anomalies beneath documented library floors. Unexplained magnetic fields, temperature shifts, and low-frequency vibrations resembling machinery in motion. These investigations often end abruptly, equipment failing without cause, or locations sealed by sudden, inexplicable collapses. The stories echo older warnings. The deeper one goes, the closer the interaction with forces not meant for human comprehension. The library itself may serve as a buffer, a deceptive calm above a storm of knowledge and power locked below. Artifacts reportedly removed from the vault have a pattern. They vanish after brief appearances in the hands of collectors, institutions, or scholars. Some return inexplicably, often with subtle changes, inscriptions altered, mechanisms in different positions, or materials slightly shifted. These occurrences suggest the vault maintains control over its contents, as if aware of the threat that exposure could bring. It is a silent enforcer of secrecy, ensuring that what lies beneath the library does not leak into the world above. Legends speak of a particular chamber within the vault, a circular room lined with books and machines, its center occupied by a pedestal supporting an object described only as a catalyst. Witnesses claim it radiates an energy that is both alluring and oppressive, drawing the curious near while repelling the faint-hearted. Some theorists suggest it is a power source, a repository of knowledge condensed into a form capable of influencing matter or thought. Others warn it is a trap designed to ensnare those who seek forbidden understanding, leaving them lost within the labyrinth of the vault, their minds echoing with visions that may never fade. The vault beneath the library remains one of history's most guarded secrets. Centuries of reports, fragmented notes, and eyewitness testimonies converge on a chilling consensus. The deeper knowledge is stored, the higher the stakes. The library above tempts and teaches, while the vault below tests and punishes, embodying a duality of human ambition and caution. In contemplating the vault, one confronts a fundamental truth. Some doors exist not to be opened, some knowledge not to be wielded, and some guardians never to be challenged. As the centuries unfolded, the library remained shrouded in secrecy, but the modern era brought a new layer of intrigue. Scholars and explorers who dared to trace its traces in the 20th and 21st centuries often found themselves met with obstacles that were more than mere bureaucracy. Documents vanished from archives, photographs were mysteriously unfiled or misplaced, and references in academic journals disappeared without a trace. Those who attempted to publish findings were quietly discredited, their reputations undermined, their work dismissed as delusion or forgery. Intelligence agencies, too, entered the narrative, though their involvement was neither public nor fully understood. Reports, partially declassified or leaked through careful channels, reveal that certain state organizations actively monitored claims about the library and its contents. Expeditions funded by private research organizations were infiltrated, journals were confiscated, and correspondence intercepted. Names that appeared in early reports of discoveries were later scrubbed from official records, leaving only hints of their existence. This modern silence mirrors the centuries-old patterns of suppression, demonstrating that the fear surrounding the library persisted despite technological advancement and global connectivity. Some accounts describe explorers who succeeded in locating hidden wings or secret compartments within buildings long associated with the library. Diaries and field notes survived only partially, describing discoveries that hinted at previously unknown manuscripts, cryptic devices, and artifacts of unimaginable craftsmanship. But these records rarely reached publication. In most cases, the researchers were forced into legal battles, shadowed by threats, or their work co-opted and quietly shelved. Every attempt to bring the library's secrets to light seemed met with coordinated erasure, a systematic method ensuring that the world above remained unaware of what lay beneath. Even photography and film, technologies that revolutionized documentation, were not immune. Slides, negatives, and reels chronicling expeditions suddenly went missing. In some instances, images survived only as blurred copies or fragments, obscured in ways that suggested deliberate tampering. Analysts who studied these remnants noted anomalies. Architecture that defied conventional design, symbols carved into surfaces that bore no linguistic match, and artifacts whose materials resisted any known analytical methods. The modern silence was not passive. It was active, almost alive in its enforcement. The role of scholars was equally precarious. Academics who investigated the library often faced professional isolation. Universities distanced themselves from controversial projects, citing funding or credibility concerns. Papers submitted for peer review were rejected under vague pretexts, and conferences subtly redirected attention away from forbidden topics. Yet, despite the obstacles, fragments of knowledge seeped into public awareness. Rare books, obscure journals, and coded references preserved hints of the library's existence, scattered across decades and continents. These fragments were never enough to reconstruct the library's entirety, but they ensured that its legend persisted, whispered among those willing to seek truth in shadows. The modern silence also extended to technological attempts. Researchers who tried to digitally map locations associated with the library encountered inexplicable anomalies. Satellites and remote sensors recorded sudden signal disruptions. Equipment malfunctioned without cause, and digital archives were corrupted just as patterns of interest began to emerge. Some theorists suggest that the library's secrets may be protected not only by human interference, but by mechanisms beyond current understanding: geometric layouts, environmental conditions, or perhaps even devices left in place to guard against observation. These protections maintain the tension between discovery and denial, reinforcing the library's role as a threshold that humanity was never meant to cross casually. Legends surrounding the modern silence also speak of disappearances and accidents. Individuals involved in field research, manuscript authentication, or archival reconstruction sometimes vanished under circumstances deemed suspicious. In other cases, careers ended abruptly following unexplained events: fires in offices, sudden illness, or financial ruin. Surviving accounts describe a pervasive sense of being watched, as though the library itself exerted influence over those who approached its truths too closely. Whether psychological, social, or supernatural, these pressures ensured that knowledge remained incomplete, reinforcing a centuries-long chain of silence. Yet, for all the suppression, the library has never entirely faded from modern consciousness. Digital forums, independent researchers, and clandestine publications preserve its echoes. Tiny fragments of manuscripts circulate, annotated with observations and conjectures. Hidden devices are photographed and shared, albeit anonymized or altered to prevent recognition. Each new discovery, however small, revives a network of curiosity, a chain reaction of fascination that ensures the legend endures. The modern silence is thus both a barrier and a magnet. It obscures the truth while simultaneously compelling the most determined minds to search, analyze, and speculate, leaving behind a mosaic of forbidden knowledge. In considering the modern silence, one sees a continuum. The same forces that once sought to erase or guard the library have adapted to contemporary tools and methods. Power and fear remain constant, but so does human curiosity. The library's secrets, though fragmented and obscured, persist in whispers, fragments, and anomalies. Its modern history is a testament to the enduring tension between concealment and revelation, a reminder that some truths are always pursued, even when the world above acts as though they must never be found. Centuries of secrecy converge in this final chapter, revealing the profound tension between human curiosity and the forces that have sought to contain it. The library, if it truly exists as the scattered fragments and whispered testimonies suggest, holds knowledge that surpasses the imagination. Accounts of vanished civilizations, technologies centuries ahead of their time, and insights into the natural and metaphysical world that defy comprehension. Every manuscript, every artifact, carries a weight that ordinary understanding cannot shoulder, as if the accumulation of truth itself might reshape reality. Explorers, scholars, and clandestine researchers throughout history have glimpsed fragments of this forbidden knowledge, only to find themselves overwhelmed, discredited, or lost. The modern era has amplified both the danger and the potential. Digital access, advanced analytical tools, and global communication could theoretically allow the contents to be reconstructed, analyzed, and disseminated. Yet with every step forward, the risk intensifies. Knowledge in the wrong hands, or even in well-intentioned ones, can become a weapon, a source of chaos, or a philosophical burden too great for society to bear. Within these pages, one might encounter instructions for devices that manipulate energy or matter in ways that contradict known laws of physics, medical texts describing cures, or procedures far beyond current medicine, and records of events that undermine the accepted history of humanity itself. The ethical dilemmas are immediate and staggering. Is humanity prepared to wield what it finds, or would the very act of possession trigger consequences we cannot predict? The library is not merely a repository of facts. It is a crucible testing our readiness to confront truth in its purest and most dangerous form. Despite centuries of suppression, human curiosity is relentless. Anonymous researchers, digital archivists, and secretive societies continue to piece together what can be found, driven by the allure of revelation. Yet even those who succeed partially must confront an unnerving reality. Fragments alone may alter perception, challenge belief systems, and ignite disputes among those who seek control. Knowledge cannot be possessed without consequence. The very act of understanding may bind the seeker to responsibilities and dangers previously unimaginable. Legends of guardians, human, institutional, or otherwise, serve as metaphors for this enduring risk. They remind us that some truths are too potent, that the act of uncovering may itself be a test. Time and again, history demonstrates that the suppression of knowledge is not merely an exercise of power, but a reflection of human unpreparedness. Even the modern silence, enforced through technology and bureaucracy, cannot fully erase the library's influence. Its existence persists in anomalies, fragments, and the persistent drive of those drawn to it. As we contemplate what might lie within, the tension between revelation and restraint crystallizes. The library, in all its enigma, challenges humanity to ask whether we are capable of wielding knowledge responsibly. Could access to such truths elevate civilization, Or would it unravel the very foundations upon which it stands? The manuscripts, the artifacts, and the technologies collectively form a mirror, reflecting both our ambition and our limitations. Ultimately, the story concludes not with answers, but with awareness. The knowledge we were never meant to hold remains partially hidden, partially known, a force both magnetic and terrifying. Humanity's journey to uncover it is ongoing, guided by curiosity, ambition, and an inexhaustible desire to push boundaries. And in that pursuit lies the most haunting revelation of all. Some truths may be inevitable, yet we may never be fully ready for them. In the silence that follows, one reality remains clear. The library's legacy is not simply the contents of its shelves, but the enduring challenge it presents. Across time and culture, it asks humanity to confront the balance between discovery and restraint, between ambition and wisdom. To peer into its depths is to confront the limits of knowledge itself, and to realize that some secrets may be both the most valuable and the most dangerous possessions a human mind can encounter.